Alright guys, Master Xeon here with a really sped up time-lapse part 2. So in this one you'll see me make some major modifications to the shape of the head as well as do some UV unwrapping. Fail at texture painting, you know it happens to all of us, but I wanted to play around with some of the new stencil painting tools since I haven't done anything about texture painting in a while. So I just start putting seams in to try to divide some of these into nicely shaped islands. Um, but I'm not liking how the face isn't the center of the map, and there's so much more room for the rest of the body. So I go on the internet, of course, start looking up just UV maps in general and see how other people's UVs looked. And so I decided instead of making a closed mouth cat, I should open his mouth up and show his teeth, and then when I rig it, close his mouth, so that way the anatomy for the inside of the mouth is there, and the model will be more complete. So I was quite proud of it at first until it was pointed out how off I was about the whole anatomy thing. Just extrude, fill faces. And also a note, they've actually made some upgrades to the bridge tool in the latest version of Blender. So if you're not building from the source or, getting it every now and then off of BuildBot, now would be a good time to get it to just try that out, since now you can use the bridge tool and it'll bridge between uneven edge sizes, which is pretty crazy since I care less and less about topology, or I just care more about getting the form built and then going back and correcting it. But you'll see me use the 3D cursor as my axis with numpad, with a period, and I'll just rotate, moving only the ones in the mouth area. And I think there's some weirdness going on. There's still quite a few glitchy things that have been happening lately with Blender, but it's just not able to be explained. I was rendering this cat at one point, and for some reason it would not show his body. It would just show his hair and a portion of his body, and there was no mask modifier or any of that. There was no masking object, occluding it, so it took me a moment to figure it out. I don't even remember what I did. I think I closed it, reopened it, tried the official build or something. So he's going to have a mouth looking pretty doughy for a while, but eventually it'll start looking more manageable, especially once I close it. And I thought a cat would be a pretty good modeling exercise, take a break from people, which is what I pretty much spent all my time practicing. But, animals is a whole different game. And it's something that I think I take for granted because I still try to use rigging practices that are ideal for humans, or pretty much only ideal for humans, on things that probably shouldn't use it, but I'm getting better. Well, maybe we should come back and make a gorilla or something. Well, I've been wanting to do like a chocobo bird. Like, I've been practicing, I got a couple of nice shots at it. Because, birds I think are kind of easy to, once you start sculpting in the beak, the whole idea is given to you. So when it came to building the mouth, I pretty much just added edge loops to fit and try to just keep it only as enough. However, since there's so much geometry under the mouth, I did use it to my advantage and even put the little inner roof lining that you see that's up on cats. So the sculpting tools, I'm not even using my tablet. I just come in here. Sometimes I'll just take the draw brush, turn on anchored, which if you don't know what anchored is, you should try it out. But basically, it lets you click an area, drag out, and it'll just add mass. And that's really useful for everything from sculpting to just controlling your contours of the form because, to sculpt, you don't always need a multi-res. It works pretty good uh, just with polygons and more of just tuning it around. So I've actually been working pretty diligently on this cat off camera. Like I haven't made too many changes, but I did want to do a focused first study before I went back because I wasn't pleased with the result at all. It just looks so mangy and it sticks off the surface, and I just don't like the way my fur is coming out. I just need to really examine, the direction with it and just do a couple of smaller studies. So I also decided to give him a mouth bag. So if you look too deep in the mouth, it'll look fake. But from the right distance that I plan on showing this at, I think I'll get the job done. Plus, since it'll be full body, I don't think too many people will be focusing on it. Plus, the tongue will be in the way. So sometimes with the mirror and extruding or insetting, or whatever I do, I just end up with these double loops. So I'm just, edge sliding my way away from them with double G. Polygons can be a little painful at this point, but I've become pretty keen at looking at them, and I can just tell if there's a double in the same place, but off by a little bit, or whatever causes these edges that I can't remove with remove doubles very easily. That are byproducts of the knife tool, of course, but you really got to just keep hitting smooth, looking at it, flipping them normals. Whenever I'm modeling around like that, I press Control in quite a bit just to make sure it's all flipping because nothing's worse than finding out you didn't do it in advance. So I put a lot of emphasis in making sure that that doesn't happen because nothing's nastier than a normal artifact. Yeah, so that geometry is just not pleasing, but at this point, I just want to close it up, get the shape of the cat, and I'll worry about that during the final stages of finalizing the model. But, spend too much time pulling around geometry, lose interest in whatever you're making, or at least such is the case for me. So in the online reviews, they said that the face was not very predatory. He's smiling. My girlfriend said he's a creepy cat. She wouldn't want to have anything to do with him. Rest of my friends think it looks alright, but definitely got to work on getting that likeness. But, I was also going for kind of an adorable-ish cat. Because, I did sculpt it. I didn't use references intensely to try to match it up. So a lot of it is just me eyeballing and pulling proportions. But, you sculpt what you feel. In fact, by the final video that, this cat is actually intended for, I think it'll work out pretty well. So I actually duplicate the mouth, press P to cut it out, and then that allows me to just focus on just this geometry without having to hide everything or anything like that. And so, like I said, I try to build the roofing of his mouth. If I could just do it with this dense geometry, then, maybe that dense geometry has a purpose, and I won't just diamond quad it off, so I end up with another geometrical snafu on my hands, like the bottom part of his jaw. But you won't see me fix it for a while. In fact, I may not have even fixed it at all. And so I want to bring up some gums. During the modeling part of the teeth, I was pretty amazed by how few teeth the cat has. And I was originally going to put this on Blend Swap and let everybody get it, but since this is still an incomplete model, I mean, if y'all are wanting to follow along or study the blends or something, just, drop me a message and I'll add a Dropbox link to the description and y'all can, check out the files. But, you should definitely stop by Blender Artist and check out Astro by Dragoo. After looking at it, I realized I should probably work a lot harder on this cat, especially with such a high bar being put by him. Delete the back geometry, try to make something more generous. Now, I think I mentioned in a previous video about how I used a bevel with edge loops to double them or triple them and just roll them out, and it's a pretty good alternative to Control R. So I mean, you grab a loop, press Control B, and suddenly you just have an interpolation plane existing between those 2 points. And while that sounds crazy, I think it's pretty big. We used to not even have a bevel, or at least a suitable bevel, and now we got a great one. I mean, I think I could probably model someone using only like 8 tools. Wouldn't be a very nice one, but I was thinking earlier that I should try that out. So I'm just rotating the T, press double Z to rotate on its local axis, and then, R and then Z to rotate on its global, and set up a mirror, make it mirror the face. I'm just going to slap these teeth in it. Now, because sworn cats had more teeth, I mean, they always looked like they had more teeth, but this cat only had like 4 teeth. So I start looking at other cats. And then I start looking at, pictures of skulls of cats, see how many teeth they have in their skull. Hope they, keep their teeth upon death. But I mean, all these pictures, they show like 8 teeth. But I guess a cat with a full row of teeth would look pretty weird. So another news, while I'm just throwing these teeth in, I was watching the Colbert report, and he was talking about PBS and their dire need of money. That should be the home of Blender TV. But, I was thinking of actually making a mock-up for it and start slapping on some of my videos to be funny. And that looks pretty good, so I'll just duplicate these, I think. Try to mirror it. Sometimes the mirror tool is around. I'm telling you, sometimes you have the mirror tool. I promise you. Just Control M and then the axis. And I say sometimes because every other version it's missing. I mean, it's not bad, but it becomes to visit the mirror tool. Just keep them in mind. And me personally, I think I began to like the face and got stuck in its ways and failed to notice the bulging eyes and creepiness that the cat is actually giving off. But, it's my kitty. So now to take the old jaw and put in the new jaw. Sounded like it would be easy. It wasn't. But now he has a crease under the middle part under his nose I don't like, so hopefully y'all see me go in pretty quick and fix that. I know I did. And I just extrude out a tongue using the power of mirror and just bring out the tongue and then just slide in the edges. Well, not slide them in, but bring them in on the X, so that way it's more the shape of a tongue. But there we go. Now I got a cat with eyeballs. I think it's looking pretty good. Time for new music. I think narrating these in after the recording is a little more convenient for me since I don't watch my own videos a whole lot, but it allows me a chance to kind of see myself in, I guess, third person and hate things and demand things, Like, you ever watch a Blender video? I remember there was one, especially with David Ward back in the day, where there was a button he just would not click. Or, you see it in a couple of Andrew Price's older videos where he'll just forget an obvious button. It's just in the heat of Blender, you miss it. But we see it because we're just observing. But that kind of stuff. But with my entire technique, I really need to find a better screencasting solution. And so, more playing around with the UVs. So in the end, I never really get UVs that satisfy me, but I do get UVs that I guess let me paint. And clone painting a cat is definitely some of iTunes is malfunctioning, but now my library's back. That's great. So with the UVs, I thought the neck got a lot of room on the whole map altogether, so I tried straightening out some areas. Usually I'll just hit the command with W, select straighten, press Q, go into sculpt mode, and just sculpt the UVs to just equalize some of the room that's given and smooth them out. That's actually the tongue, but I don't realize it. And that piece below it is actually the segment in between the nose. But for some reason I give it an adequate size. And UVing in Blender is weird. It's hard to explain. You create your images, you can just assign your images. The images that you make in Blender, you save out as images, and then the image that you have in Blender is still its own image that you modify, and you can bake to and save out, and modify, and paint on, and I know it could be a little cryptic, but now I'm just looking at the UV map on the cat to just see how equal it looks, and it actually looks alright except for the diagonaling and the neck. But that's probably as a result of me straightening them out so forcibly. And I add fur. Several times I completely destroyed my computer rendering fur. There's just something about 1,000 strands and 250 children that Blender doesn't like, or my GPU doesn't like. Now I feel the need for 2 GPUs, but I can't fit another one in this tower, so, maybe someday in the future I'll be able to get a more powerful PC, but in the meantime, when it comes to strands, I was torn between feeling like I was using too high of a number to accomplish something to begin with, and then not intelligently using a smaller number to accomplish the same thing, which I felt I should have been able to do. And so I'm just showing y'all renders of the last scene, and play with the fur a little bit, and the sizes. And all of this is just me experimenting with the fur, because messing with fur and GPU cycles is still, having fur and GPU and cycles is still pretty new, and I didn't mess with a whole lot in internal because the render times would just get insane. Like, waiting 20 minutes to look at something that I'm going to be like, I need to tune a bar a little bit more, gets frustrating. But I'm getting smarter at reducing those times. So I use the skin modifier to build the body, add a mirror, and all I did was just drop in a plane, delete all the verts except for one, snap it to the origin, which, that information isn't even important, but basically I started with one vert and just applied, just put a skin modifier on it. And that allows me to just mess around with the scaling of it just on a vertex level. So, back in the day, I would just take a cube and extrude a cube and just go from there. But now I see that, with the combination of this dynamic topology, you have a pretty full feature set within Blender. And so this is the first mistake of me making the cat, is I built it myself without using anatomy. I just looked at pictures of a cat and was like, I think I'm gonna make it without studying. And in the end, it got me flamed quite a bit online. So I'll definitely be doing a lot of sketches of cats after this video to just get an understanding of it. And I mean, as far as sketching in 3D goes, when I first started 3D, I wasn't very much of a sketch artist. And as I started studying more 3D, they started talking more about drawing and painting and stuff in the videos. So that was what I began devoting my time to. And I feel like everything I make in 3D, I should be able to draw on pen and paper. So I just always just try to draw out some of my renders sometimes. And you never get better. You just stop disappointing yourself as much. But enough about trying. So with the skin modifier, you can press Control A and scale it. And then you can press an axis like X and Y or Z and scale it on that axis. And that's useful for these sort of things. I had some weirdness when I was applying it with the mirror. For some reason, half of it looked different. With the knife tool, to cut all the way through something, you press K to activate the knife, and then you press Z, and that'll let your knife cut through everything. I call it the holy sword, because whatever you clip through, it'll just cut, and it's great. Blender used to not have it, now it does. It just gets better and better. I mean, you don't even have to suggest tool ideas. Someone else will do it for me, which is a horrible way to think, but I mean, Blender does improve at an exponential rate. And I mean, things improve on it that I didn't even think needed improving. I would have never had any idea that a tool like the F2 could have existed until I was trying it out for myself. And I built a car with it. Which is something else I want to, revisit. But I'm starting to refer to these more as studies instead of tutorials because it's never quite finished. I'm never quite pleased with these end results. And I always plan to come back and make a standard setting tutorial, Like I watched a lot of videos about cats on the internet and cats in Blender. You should go and YouTube some of them. There's not a whole lot of nice ones, but there are some good ones. But for the most part, there's not a excellent Blender cat making tutorial. And I want to be the guy that makes it. And so by using a knife, I'm able to just add a loop cut in the middle, allow me to expand on his rib area. The tail will be the death of me. Let me tell you, never was pleased with it. Still am not pleased with it now. On the model, I think I'm going to just open it up and cut it off after this and redo it. Make it 8 times longer. Well, no, just an adequate size. But I think at this point in the video, seeing myself make the body has shown me why the anatomy of my current cat is wrong. Definitely don't see myself studying it right here, but that's alright, still useful. So, the body that was given to me by the skin modifier, the geometry is horrible. I mean, I'm really just hacking it to make it look adequate, but there is no goodness here. So I use a bevel on the last verts on that part, and then roll up once to just kind of give some accent to the knee. Like I said, I plan to retopologize it, so I'm just trying to get the form. And my real goal here was to get it by just proportional editing, sliding and pulling, and just fighting vertices and not going to sculpt mode. I mean, I'm not afraid of sculpt mode, but I sculpted the whole face. What if I could make his body without sculpting? So in cycles, you can't make a shadowless. I mean, you can't make a shadows only material, which is basically where your object just sits in gray space on top of a perfect shadow. Well, instead, what I do is I just have an image that I made that's in Photoshop that's pretty much just a radial circle, and then I just use that to modulate between a transparent and a diffuse material, and that allows me a little stand to just put models on when I'm just messing with them in space. But that transparency grid in the back's kind of bad, so I'll probably need to get rid of that. I should be arrested for some of these forms I'm putting on him, but I get it done. Let's see. So at this point in the model, I'm thinking to myself, maybe I can just make this work. Maybe I can make it work and not have to retopologize it. But it just hits me. No, it will not work. You have to do it. But I still play with some fire. Boy, the cat looks real crazy right there. So I try putting a point light on it to just give it some rim light without having to go through the work of making a mesh, not have ray visibility. And we're almost to the next mini segment. But yeah, eventually I began to get self-conscious of all the experimentations I was having to do just during the fur process and decided I should just study it myself. I ended up duplicating the whiskers and putting some under the chin and above the eyes to look more like the cat I've been looking at the whole time. I think the cat has that facial expression because of the condition the cat was in whenever I was taking pictures of him. My roommates have been giving him catnip treats, so the cat just is all rambunctious now. Like we were laughing about it the other day because I always see the cat and I'm like, what an interesting cat. It's all youthful. This cat's all tripping, doped up, running around on catnip. It's like trying to Prince of Persia the curtains. It's entertaining to watch, but they're my curtains. So, you can't be doing that. And so I just removed this section completely, turn it to a wire, and proceed to just redraw. So in a way, I didn't rebuild the entire body, but there were certain areas that just had edge flows that did not work out. And by having snapping set to face, I'm able to just come in and just draw it again. I mean, I don't even look at it as retopology anymore. I look at it as redraw. It's like redrawing geometry, just putting it the way it was supposed to have been. And to touch vertices that are not over the underlying wire, I have to turn off snap mode by pressing Shift Tab or just temporarily holding down Control, which will temporarily not use it if it's on, and temporarily use it if it's off. So sometimes it's easier to temporarily use it when it's off, sometimes it's the other way. So instead of adding an edge loop to go around the entire perimeter of the cat, I decided to just end it right at the tail area. Just bill me later, you know. Still retopologizing and hiding whatever I have to just to look at the areas I need. So this part I wasn't entirely pleased with, but like I said, I do plan to come back and redo this area where it has actually animation friendly geometry. But I tried to make those accommodations at this moment in the model, but you'll see that it leaves me with a bit of a mess. And I think at this point I'm like, I didn't do what I was thinking. Most of the time, if there's just a triangle in a strange place and I don't feel like dealing with it, I might just take the bullet and just go with the triangle and just keep going. Because sometimes you start trying to hook all this stuff up and it just becomes so much of a mess that you find yourself fixing bigger messes trying to make geometry fit. And so I think the geometry in this area definitely looks much better. It is more keen to its form. However, like I said, the anatomy is all wrong. And so I remove the entire hind quarter and proceed to just redraw. Holding down control and clicking with it automatically snapping on the surface. Really, it doesn't get much easier than that until you start trying to connect all this stuff to everything else. Then it gets very much harder than this. And I think part of my issue may have been all this retopology work may have made me too keen on keeping this exact shape and not wanting to change it, because it did take me a moment to finally make some crucial adjustments that it was needing. So, it's important to not be stubborn with your work and at least listen to your criticizers, because they might have a point. And I'm just touching all these to just make sure they're snapping and smoothly laying on the underlying surface. And then I proceed to build the tail. Now, like I said, because of the way I constructed the tail, I think it ends up becoming a nuisance later because it's too, what's the word I'm looking for? It's too blocky. But yeah, I actually finished this video about 2 or 3 days ago, and I'm just now narrating it, so I'm like backlogging on tutorials, which is horrible. There we go. We'll F2 up the tail. We'll F2 up the tail. Add in some loops. And close the form. And I definitely should have reduced the amount of loopage happening there. Should have been able to tell that it would cause me a blocky result down the road. But like I said, the area of focus is the face. There might be too much DOF affecting his tail. Just kidding. Alright, picking up with narration part 2. Hopefully this part is picking up. I guess it cut out for a moment or something. More loops added around the leg area. And my main goal is to just get this connected. I think the cat's going to be posed for quite a moment. And then by the time that I do get ready to animate, I'll be having all this stuff corrected. But, I don't know if it happens to you. It happens to me quite a bit, where your brain gets fatigued on geometry and you just can't see it right, but you're determined to finish. Maybe it just happens to me. The foot is horrible, but I retopple it anyways, because it's all I have to go on. Unbeknownst to me, I actually accidentally created a end gun there, and I didn't want to. It's fairly contained. Now, since I redirected up here at the top, I'll be able to add an edge loop to conveniently go under his body and just meet at the mirror. I believe I do that right here. No, more messing around. Alright, so two more little legs to go. Alright, and things start to get a little messy, and I think I choose the easier option of just leaving it, and the other easy option of just rejoining them and calling it a day there. But these feet, horrible, have to be worked on. So I started by just adding some bevels, bevel here, and bevel here. Add an edge loop, pull those in, and for some reason I'm just set on keeping the same geometry, but I managed to make it work. Using a proportional editing tool, round it out a little bit. And now we'll just bring out some pawls and try to curve them down, keep them proportional on while just scaling at an inset extrude. Create the longest finger a cat has ever had. So we gotta definitely pull that in. And so I had a brilliant idea of trying to just fit them in like this. I don't believe it works out. And as you can see, it does not work out. So I choose the easy road. Delete these toes, delete this area. Look up some cat anatomy. Look up how their foot is built, how many paws they have, just to make sure. I think I see more cartoon cats than real cats, and they, I think, have 3 fingers. So I just decided to free model it. Scale them on the X, make them meet. Put a nice unified bridge in between them all. Just filling faces. This loop I believe was useless, but for some reason I keep it and just give it a friend on the other side to meet. But GG edge sliding, as always. Now the bottom area needed to be handled delicately, so I did the one thing you would expect me to do, not handle it delicately. And what I mean is, like with the geometry, I'm just trying to end them on diamond quads and try to reduce the amounts that I'm bringing in, when I probably should have kept that vertex density in order to more adequately indicate this paw area, because the paw he ends up with is rather strange. But I stick with it, which is my problem. Even if it's bad, as long as I made it, I will stick with it instead of betraying it. And so the top form is filled, no questions asked. As long as the area that's going to reconnect it to the rest of the leg still has only 10 vertices, or however many I was set in my rule for. And so I try to just come in and inset extrude and scale it in. and I just ended up with a very unnatural paw. But I keep trying to work with it, and I probably could have made it work, but like I said, I could have used that vertex density, and that part might have been the nail in a coffin on these feet. And I take his teeth and turn them into nails. And by using Control Numpad 7, I believe I flip upside down and give it the auto mechanic treatment and just make it all fit in while just fine tuning his little pads. But the feet do look very small in comparison to the rest of them. So I'll scale them up, ignore the mirror, because the scale will be set again once I join it with the other mesh. What was I Googling? Oh man, what weird results come up in Google Images? I don't even know what I searched for. I think I just gave up. I think I looked up cat proportions or something. So in subsurf mode, knife tool doesn't work. It like sends the point out to space or something. And when it comes to using a knife tool, sometimes you find you just can't hit the vertex you want. And the easiest way to get around that is to hold down Control, and it'll automatically snap to either a midpoint or the vertex. And I'm still trying to just make it connect, and it just won't. So those aren't even connected. Like I said, vertices will just mess with you. And even though I have n-gons and tries, not anymore. Never mind, I corrected them. So it all fits together now. And now I have a very nice front paw. And so I put the claws, join them with the mesh so they get the mirror and the orientation. And that's the end of that story. So now I duplicate the foot, move it to the back. Unbeknownst to me, that's too small and improper anatomy, among other things. I still do it. And I render it out. But like I said, the cat model is still a work in progress. So, if there's things that you see that you think I'm missing, let me know. If you think the face is extremely creepy, make a comment. He does look very scrawny there. Where is that transparency? There we go. So that's the HDRI I'm using. I'm not particularly fond of it, so you'll see me go through just a couple of HDRIs. Here's one, just a light box. We'll go through another one. Here's just another light box. But I lose some hard shadows. I don't want that. So in the end, I go with the Blender Cookie ones. Like I said, the ones that you get for free off of Blender Cookie, I like the most because they're low file sizes, they work well with Blender, and they're free. And you can download them really fast. So I usually just stick with those and just never show it and just use only the lighting information by using a mix shader with a is camera ray as the factor. So at this part, y'all see me just go through and just bring in some cat pictures to try to look at for anatomy. And I do see things that I did not see at that moment. So with the sculpt tool, I'll create a new shape key and then hit the little pin, the little thumbnail on the shape key to pin it. And by pinning it, all the modifications I make will be on the shape key. And I just sculpt away. As long as I don't add a multi-res or delete or add any modifiers, I'm able to just pin all of these changes to the shape key, allowing me to use a slider to see substantial mesh changes. So if you don't use the shape key tools for these sort of things, you're definitely missing out. So here you see me using the anchored draw brush, and basically it just allows me to click in a place and drag out, and it will just add mass there, and I just keep clicking and dragging. And then jumping back between that and the grab brush. So I'm not even using the tablet here, just mousing it away. Which usually it's not even worth pulling out the tablet if it's just level 1 geometry. And you've already blocked it in like this, of course. But what am I saying? It's always a good time to use the tablet. And as far as sculpting goes, you just gotta get in there and just start doing it. I used to always go into ZBrush to do all my sculpting. And not to say anything bad about ZBrush, but Blender made it very easy to get into it and start sculpting. Seriously, you can just go in, grab a cube, subdivide it twice, go in edit mode, subdivide it twice, extrude a neck out, just go on dynamic topology and just begin just turning it to someone else. I was working on a sculpt of Rosie O'Donnell yesterday, and I just started off with a cube and just had nightmares while looking at pictures of Rosie O'Donnell, especially in her later years, huh? So by just shifting the shape key back and forth, I'm able to see the changes without making any of it permanent. And all I have to do is just delete the bases first, and then delete the shape key, and then it's applied. And the way that you know you're doing it is, you see in the bottom left corner screen where it says plane 25, which is a cat, and he's pinned. And pinned just means that all the changes are on a shape key. So now I'm trying to UV unwrap the whole body so I can try texture painting it. This is pretty much where the video comes to the end, except it doesn't end here. You'll all see me just play with the texture painting tools, trying to use different techniques for painting the cat, which is probably worth seeing if you haven't seen any of the texture painting improvements, but I don't think the result is very good. I think to texture a cat in Blender, you either have to use a really boring texture like just a white cat or a black cat, or go with the procedural. So I've been actually going the procedural route because, you take rings and waves and Musgrave and Verona crackle and start running it through color ramps and changing those colors and then dividing and multiplying them on each other with low intensities, and it starts to look a little bit more like a cat. And then you multiply that with, easy vertex painting versus UV painting, which, vertex painting is per vertex basis. So since this is all simple, it's just be broad splashes of color. And I would just worry about the stripes through the modulation of a texture possibly, but that's at least just what I'm thinking at the moment. Sorry to say, my workflow is a little strange. Sometimes I'll just start UV unwrapping something before I'm even done with the model. Sometimes I'll start worrying about rendering and compositing in materials before I'm even done with the model. It's just jumping around allows me to, not burn myself out on a project. So maybe it's something worth giving a try. Plus, with the way Blender's improving, the workflow techniques that you would use can just be jumped around, except for most of the creation process. I mean, the second you press Control D in sculpt mode and go into dynamic topology, you lose vertex and UV data. But hopefully they plan to fix that sometime in the future. So I just remove all the UV components individually off the grid and then just place them individually based off of how important they are. So the feeder, kind of important. Uh-oh, screen's blacking out. Alright, so the feeder kind of important. Um, the lower legs are relatively important, probably more important than the feet since they're bigger. So I just try to arrange it all to fit nicely and give each of them an adequate amount of texturing room. And what are these pieces? If it isn't the tongue, which I'll use Q and shift sculpt to smooth out. And then this inner mouth parameter area has lost its seam. So mark a seam, use L in face mode to select it. And that just won't do. So why is this happening? Fixed. And so that's pretty much it. Just get all the UVs, fit in an even area. I'm not too picky about my UVs yet, but mainly because they're always subject to change for me in the model right now since I'm still perfecting my way of working. But, someday I want it to be like the pros where they're just all perfect, perfectly laying down. And so I'll give the eyes some extra room. In fact, I'll even come out of sculpt mode and just scale this in on both of them, so that way I can just smooth them in and pin it. We'll just call that final UV. However, this area does not show the UV map. Why is that? Well, it took me a moment to think about it. I even made sure the material was applied. That helped a little bit. But in the end, I mean, it showed in render view. Why did this happen? Was it a glitch? We'll never, ever know. Except I figured it out. I just had to delete the other material. It was just some weird glitch where I just had to delete the material. In slot 2, of course. So now comes texture painting. And needless to say, I wasn't very pleased with my own performance in this. As a person that enjoys texture painting a little bit, I can't say I enjoy it a lot. It still is, for the most part, painful. But, usually I actually can pull away with a pretty decent job. And so I try to just, take portions of his fur and just first I start off painting over the whole UV map. Dang, that material. I can't paint if you're going to be like that. Do I need to check for doubles? Do I need to check for smooth? No, that's all contiguous. I would just delete fur and it's fine. Look at that. Why did that happen? We'll never know. Classic Blender. So I just start painting. So with texture painting, you can now just take an image, make it a brush, add it as a texture, and then use stencil mode to be able to use it in 3D space. And the controls for it are a little strange, but I've become used to it. I believe you can right click it and move the image around. You can, I believe, hold Alt, right click it, and you can scale it. And if you press your axis, you can actually scale it on an axis, which I just discovered. And that is actually very nice. But this tool in particular is very comparable to ZBrush's Spotlight, or at least in my opinion, because Spotlight allows you to just throw up an image and just start painting or even sculpting with it. But it also has tools to allow you to edit the image that you've loaded, change the gamma, flip it, all sorts of things. So it's pretty crazy how that one works too. But I mean, Blender is definitely getting comparable. So I tried just painting in the fur, and in some areas I was pleased with, in most areas I wasn't. Because I mean, there's flash, there's different elements. I tried using a clone brush and be smart about it. And then I used a clone brush too much and end up with horrible looking legs. And what's bad is in retrospect now I see what I should have actually have done, and I would have been able to get a better result. Like I could have easily have taken these images and GIMP or Photoshop and used the warp tools to warp them into textures that I actually needed, or I could have been exporting the cat to Photoshop and then using the paint from camera tools. But here you see me completely run the beautiful job I did on the top. What's this horrible picture of a texture from the side? I tried duplicating it, look for another picture. Like I said, this cat was on drugs. He wouldn't even sit still for me to take pictures of them. And I think that's why my cat's eyes are all big. So I also turned on mirror and repeat to try to see if that would help. It didn't. Here we go. Now I discovered that I can scale it. And once I mastered the rotation system, then I thought, okay, maybe I can do this. Maybe it's not so difficult. But I just wasn't very pleased with the result. And then on top of that, I wasn't very happy with the idea of painting fur because I'm simulating fur. If I'm simulating fur, then why am I painting it? Is that just me cheapening it? Maybe I should make a cat that actually has a skin tone underneath and then actually give them enough fur to look like a cat. Or at least that's what I was thinking. But first I thought I'd just paint it, see how far I'd get. Put a mirror modifier, just do half the work. We'll bring in this mugshot photo of the cat and scale it to correct proportions. One of the useful things about the new brushes is that, one of the useful things about the new brush is that you can make the image not only overlay but disappear while you're painting, which is fantastic because you don't want to see the image while you're painting. You want to see it just like you're seeing it right now. And in retrospect, I really think that if I would have spent a little bit more time painting it and not being so quick to count it out, that I probably would have got a decent texture painting job with this. But also wasn't pleased with how the whiskers just were kablow on the face, right there, bam, whiskers, painted. Nothing says flat face like painted whiskers. So I decided to try to make a cat brush. Use my classic Photoshop tricks of using the eraser on light to try to blend some layers and then overlay them horribly. And I also try with a second image. Also had this idea that I should just bring in a leg and then just use a leg to paint. I actually did not get around to trying it, but I figured if I would have isolated some cat parts in perfect proportion, then I would be able to just paint it like so, but I felt silly for thinking it. And now I have my PNG for my cat brush. And so I bring that image in, just drop it in the UV image editor so it's just catched in the blender. And that's it. So since I got the alpha values, the brush works even better. But due to some proportional issues, it just did not work out. And then I think the brush was on low. And then I think the brush was on clone. And I wasn't aware of it. So I just infuriated myself with it. But this video is almost to a close. But before it ends, you'll see me try to paint more on it. And the cat will end up looking like a wild cat. Or a cat that you wouldn't let in your house. and I come in and I proceed to ruin most of the face. But I think with the correct scaling it would have worked out. But that pretty much concludes this study of Housecat Part 2. And so I'll be back with Part 3, but I do plan to make some off-camera adjustments and studies to improve it. But till then, happy blendering.